Have you ever carried a mattress by yourself? Have you tried
I
to
have
carry a mattress?
tried. I cannot.
Exactly.
It's impossible.
There's a huge metaphor in that
Huh.
because we all feel this weight of a mattress that we carry around, like the heaviness of a mattress. And we keep
Mm.
thinking we all have to carry it alone. But even when we're faced with it, it's like we can't.
Yeah.
And on a metaphorical level, you're like, oh,
Oh.
we're not supposed
Yeah.
to carry this
We're
alone.
not
We're
supposed
supposed
to.
to ask for help. We're supposed to allow that to kind of unfold itself. But it's this like, whatever was meant to happen is meant to happen. And we think we have to kind of steer the ship because it's
Mm.
our lives and we're the captain. But I actually think we're meant to stand witness and give input, but not necessarily be steering the boat and let life steer the boat,
Mm.
which is scary because you're like, well, that means it could just take me over here. Like, then what? Because we don't know what that looks like. We don't know what happens if we let our hands off the wheel looks like.
Let go of control.
Because we just let go of control. And that is really hard for people because they're like, but if I control, I stay safe.
Yeah.
And if we let go of control, maybe I'm not safe anymore. And if you start looking into that, it's like, well, why don't you feel safe anymore? Like
Mm.
what is safety for you? Because it's different for everybody.
Mm.
But what's safety for you? And then once you kind of establish that, it's like, can you still feel safe without being in control and letting it kind of play out and still find your safety? So if things are chaotic or if something happens or you get into an accident or your tire pops or you can't find your credit card or whatever, can you let that chaos sensation
Exist.
without you actively participating in the chaos?
Mm.
Yeah.
Can you just bear witness and stand back and
Mhm.
release? Those are the moments that like really require our deep presence. We've
Exactly.
had the time to work with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Welcome, beautiful creatures, to the Lightness of Being podcast, where we celebrate the dance of life and explore ways to find joy, laughter, and lightness, even when faced with challenges. Join me, your host, Monika Stefanik, as we step into the light and discover a realm of potential and possibilities for greater ease in our lives. Let's laugh, learn, and grow together.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yeah.
for being here.
Yeah,
for
thanks
your
for
energy
having
and your
me.
presence. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've already like dove in, but welcome
I
to
know,
the
we did.
Lightness of Being podcast, you guys. We're here with a sweet sister, Sarah, who we are only just becoming friends.
Mhm.
Because we met a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I think so.
Just like a very synchronistic moment when you
Mhm.
came to the class that Kathleen and I did and had tea for our first time just like 2 or 3 days ago.
Yeah.
Just here we are
Yeah.
now, and it's so beautiful.
It's just this beautiful unfolding, just like
beautiful
letting
unfolding,
go.
just letting go. We're here in synchronicity. It's just all of it is so amazing. On my way here, I was thinking about what was the song that was playing as we were leaving the coffee
We're gonna
shop?
be friends
We're gonna be
by
friends.
the White Stripes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And it was loud too.
It
Did you
was
notice
really
that?
loud. Yeah.
It was like the music wasn't there the whole time we were chatting.
Mhm.
And then it just felt so loud at the end. And I was like, that's what drew my attention. I was like, why is this song so loud?
Yeah. And you're like, I know
Oh,
this song.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was really trying to draw our attention. And it's
Really
taking that moment of presence,
Mm.
right? You recognize that something is out of place. If you're at a restaurant or something and everything gets louder, you're like, why is it
What's happening?
Where was I if everything is loud? Was it always this loud?
Mm-hmm.
Was it this loud when I walked in? I don't know.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
So grateful for the magic unfoldment of life.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where this conversation takes us today.
Yeah.
We can talk about so many things. I'd love to just for you to share. Okay, before we do that,
Okay.
the question that I ask everyone:
Oh,
what are you celebrating right now in your life?
a lot of things, I think. I've spent quite a bit of time unlearning.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that needs to be celebrated.
Yeah.
And that looks like healing. That looks like sometimes being in hermit mode and reprioritizing things in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Unlearning a way of being that I had been for such a long time. And I want to keep celebrating that because it's really brave to do that.
Mm.
It takes a bit of courage because you just don't know where you're headed.
And humility.
Yeah.
And leads to this beautiful becoming
Mhm.
view.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's beautiful. I would love to, dive into that. Unlearning. I was actually thinking about that as I was getting ready to come over here. I was like, that feels really alive. But before we do, would you share a little bit about you and
Okay.
who you are and what you do and just or how you be in this world?
I like how you phrase that.
Mm.
I think that one question that would be like, "Oh, what do you do?" And then it implies, "What's your job?"
What's your job? Yeah, I was like, no, but it's so much more than that.
Exactly. And I understand. I mean, it's a quick way to get to a quick answer,
Mm.
and make people feel comfortable, and that's easy to do. But I like that the space is more of like, "Who are you being?"
Mhm.
Because that gives me the opportunity to say, "That's a great question. I'm finally being myself."
Mm.
I, in the past, may have said, "Oh, I'm a teacher, I'm a mother, I'm a this, I'm a that," and give myself labels, because those feel very comfortable to the ego.
Mhm.
But I think where I'm at now is I'm a change maker, and I'm unintentionally inspiring other people to do things. I have conversations like this, and um, they're like, "Oh, I had this brilliant idea after I talked to you." And I'm like, "Great. I had no idea I did that."
Mhm.
Um, so, but what I
Spreading your
am
sparkle.
spreading my sparkle. That's exactly what I'm doing. Tapping just a little bit of glitter and fairy dust on them. Um, and a lot of it is virtual too, which is great because
Mm.
I'm talking to people all over the world.
Mm.
I'm co-authoring a book called Start Over, Turn
Mm.
Any Loss into a Sensational Comeback. And I think it's about a month away from publishing digitally and then 6 weeks from paperback. So that's
That's
exciting.
huge.
It's
It's so
huge.
exciting.
It's very exciting. Yeah.
You just like settle into that for a minute. Publishing a book is huge. And you're
I'm
co-authoring it.
co-authoring it. Yeah, there's a few other authors in there have incredible stories. And
Mm.
it's beautiful too because it's moments of triumph. So you hear this story that's just so impactful and then you hear their triumph over it and where they are now. And it's just really inspiring to read all of these stories from people all over the world and the things they've experienced. It's just heartbreaking. But they're really incredible humans. And I feel just so grateful to be part of that process.
Mm.
And so actually I'll be traveling kind of on a book tour to be able to spread that around the world, which would be very cool. Um, I'm writing children's books, so I'm in the process of that. And I actually am a clairvoyant, psychic, channeler. There's a lot of things that I could put under that umbrella.
Mhm.
Um, and I utilize that in life coaching. So I help people come back to themselves. I think we can very easily get lost or want some direction. And my job is to kind of guide you back to who you are and then let you go about your day. Like I want you to like not need me.
Yeah, of course.
So I work with people one on one and help them answer questions or remove blocks that they've been facing for a long time.
Wow.
Um, and then we get them to a place of empowerment that they feel like they know what their purpose is and where they're meant to go. And that's been really beautiful. I've had a number of really successful clients come through the last few months, and it's fun to see their transformation. And then they come back and share their stories, and it's
Wow.
great. So yeah,
Amazing.
that's kind of what I'm up to at the moment.
Making a real impact. That's so beautiful.
Doing my best. Yeah.
How or when did you know that you were clairvoyant, or what did that unfoldment look like for you?
So this is quite a story.
Okay.
I'm going to try to, I can narrow it down if you like.
Okay. However it needs to come through. We're here for it.
So I think I kind of always knew I had premonitions a lot as a kid, but I didn't grow up in a house that supported a lot of that experience. And so I didn't really know what to do with it. It would show its head every once in a while, kind of throughout my life. And looking back, I'm like, oh, Yeah, definitely that moment.
Mm.
But I had contracted long COVID in 2020. I was an early patient. I dealt with really horrible symptoms for about 10 months and they just progressively got worse. I had neuropathy, which is like the pins and needles feeling all over the body. I had POTS syndrome. I mean, there was a whole list of things. Then I developed a tremor in my hand, started in my thumb, moved to my hand, went up to my arm. So at the point where I couldn't even like really eat breakfast without my fork just
Oh my
going
God.
crazy. And I had a neurologist. They were testing me for Parkinson's and MS and all kind of brain tumors, all
Oh
kinds of
my
things.
gosh.
And they didn't have an answer. I had really horrible migraines like every other day, couldn't get out of bed, couldn't
Must
be
have been
around
so
darkness.
scary.
It is, especially I had a 3 and a 5-year-old at home, and it's scary because how do you care for kids when you can barely care for yourself?
Right.
But it was like every day was a battle, and I was working out every day, I was exercising, eating really healthy, I'd been part of this health group for a while, and so it wasn't that I wasn't doing the right things, but it was out of my control.
Mm.
It was out of my control.
Mhm.
And I was very clearly being directed to like, you really need to slow down. Like your life, you were just trying to push too hard and do too much, and you need to slow down. And this was the message, but I wasn't getting it.
Mm. That's
And
usually how disease and illness comes in, though.
it really does. It comes in slow and gets louder and louder and louder until you listen.
One of my favorite quotes that I tell my clients all the time is like, listen to your body when it whispers so you don't have to hear it scream.
Yes, that's a very wise statement. Yeah. So I didn't listen. I didn't listen to the whispers and I didn't listen to the shouting, even.
You're
On
not the only one.
No, I know. In January of 2021, it was Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So very early in the morning, at the time, we're not married anymore, but my husband had come home from the night shift at the hospital. He's a pharmacist. And we were working out. We were trying to reconnect to one another, and the room started to spin. So I got on all fours, and I realized it was getting worse. So I laid on my back. I thought it was just another symptom that was happening to me. And I lost all sensation on the right side of my body,
Oh my God.
which indicates a
A
stroke, right? And at that point, I'm telling him what's going on. And he's told my daughters to run down the driveway, go to the neighbor's house. And he took me to the hospital 6 minutes away. It's not that far. On the drive, I said, I'm about to lose the left side of my body. You need to tell them. He thought that meant you need to tell the hospital. But what I was trying to say is tell my daughters I love them because I thought I was going to die. And so I had lost all motor function on the left side of my body. Very strange because a stroke is typically one side,
Yeah.
not both sides. So now they're thinking, okay, there's got to be something in the center. If it's affecting both sides,
Yeah.
is there a tumor? Is there something pressing on both sides? Essentially, what had happened was I lost all motor function, but my thinking brain is moving as fast as I'm talking to you now. I was literally trapped inside my body.
Wow.
People have these stories where they have surgery or whatever, and they're awake during the entire process. That's what was happening. So everyone's talking over me. They're testing me. I'm failing every test. They can't find what's wrong with me. But I was in a small town. So they're like, there's a small amount of window that they can give you medication. We have to go to this other hospital. We have to airlift you there. And it was up to my husband to make this decision. And the doctor basically said, if it was me, I would send her. And I knew in my body, I was like, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. But I can't say that.
Can't
I
say
can blink. I can breathe,
Oh my God.
but that's about all I can do. And grunt. But it wasn't even like a full grunt because I didn't have full muscle abilities. So they strapped me on a gurney, took me into the helicopter, sent me on my way. And I blacked out in the helicopter. I woke up on the roof of the hospital. They wheeled me down into the emergency room. This is like peak COVID time in this city I was in. And so there's a bunch of doctors came into the room. The air pilot is trying to relay what was going on in the file that they handed over. And he left. Doctors conversing, can't say anything, can't advocate for myself, can't do anything. And they left the room. And this is when I had my near death experience and I blacked out again. Um, and I had a conversation with God and was shown what my skill sets are and what I'm here to do. I felt this overwhelming sense of pain, of knowing what's going on in the world and how much people are suffering and how much pain they're in, and this sadness that they're not reaching to him, not reaching out to the universe, not seeking any kind of guidance of any kind, if even if it's not him, but just something lighter and bringing people together.
Mm.
Um, and then just this like warmth and like love you can't describe, just this peaceful warmth, and you're like, I don't want to leave this place. You know, and again, in that spot in your
Mhm.
bed, and you're just like, oh, this is the best feeling ever. I
Yeah.
don't want to move from this spot. It's like that, but just all over.
Wow.
And I was like, do you want to go back? So I had a choice.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I have a job to do. Like I have this ability. I can do this. That's amazing. So I came back, still didn't have motor symptoms, but I woke up, can't ask for help, can't use the call button. I can't move my hands. So it's just like eyeing the person in the hallway.
Wow.
Um, they come in, they send 2 men into the room, told me that I have anxiety. We're going to give you something to sleep for a couple hours, but then we need your bed. They didn't run a single test. They didn't call anyone. At this point, my husband had driven to the city that we were in. It was a couple hours away.
Mm.
When they wouldn't let him in.
Given what?
They wouldn't let him in. He couldn't get a hold of the doctors. They were too busy. Just basically dismissed. So after a couple of hours, they woke me up and were putting me, my vitals were fine. And they were basically, I met a few of the tests, the motor function tests. They're like, you can recover at home. They put me in the wheelchair and put me in the car and we went home and went to see my neurologist. No one had called my neurologist, by the way.
Oh my God.
Not a single phone call was made to his office or his emergency line. Hey, we've got her here. What do we do? No one called. So we went back to his office and he was like, we have to wait for you to collapse again before we figure out what happened to you. And I was like,
No.
no, not going to do
Not
that.
an option.
No. It took about probably 24 hours to kind of fully come back in my body, but you're pretty exhausted at that point. Like everything is
Course.
stripped from you and you just feel exhausted. There's still to this day, I have no answers. Um, they never ran a single test. I saw a healer a week later after this experience. Um, and all my symptoms were gone in 45 minutes. So for 10 months, I'd fought this battle, and in an hour, it was gone. And all of my skills came online.
Mm.
Clairvoyancy, clairaudience, clairsentience, like all of it came online. Started seeing things that other people couldn't see, could see auras, could feel things that I couldn't explain. And I started being able to say things to people. And they're like, how did you know that about me? And I'm like, I don't know. So I had to find help. I was like, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
This is a lot all at once. Um, and so you just kind of navigate freshwater, just like I clearly have no control over this, but this is my gift and this is what I was given. And so I'll take all of it and I'll figure out what to do with it. But it's a lot. So I'll just go little by little and work my way through. So for the last few years, I've just been kind of honing my skill set and just trying to help people.
Wow.
So that was the long version of that story.
That's okay. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Just had so many chills running through my body as you were talking. Just can't imagine. I want to say, like, I'm sorry you went through that, but I don't
Mhm.
think that's
Right.
because like, the gift, it's kind of like the gene keys, right? Like the shadow, the
Mhm.
gift that was in that deep, dark space that you went
Exactly.
through. And then
Yeah.
this amazing, amazing space that you get to access on the
Yeah.
other side of it is
Yeah.
so beautiful. And it's, this is one of the reasons like that this podcast is called The Lightness of Being, because it's about acknowledging, not dismissing the dark stuff,
Mhm.
not
Exactly.
dismissing these things that we experience
Mhm.
as humans on this planet, which is like Earth is a very dense planet to be experiencing.
Yes.
It's a very dense
It's very
experience.
heavy.
Yeah. And so, but or not but and in that space, like acknowledging the gifts and acknowledging the lightness. And just because we're acknowledging that, that's not dismissing what we've gone through, but we're
Right.
also being like, through this experience, I'm choosing to take that and find a new path
Right.
forward instead of going deep down into the density and allowing that to identify
Right.
me. Because if
Exactly.
you had, even with having this awareness in the conversation with God, like you probably could have chosen to go like, oh, I'm going to have another experience. I'm going to collapse again. And then
Mhm.
spin
Yes.
off and worry about that. And then it probably would have happened again, right? But
Exactly.
you made a different choice
Right.
in that moment when your
Yeah.
doctor said, oh, we have to wait for you to collapse again. It's like, no,
Yeah.
that's not going to happen.
Exactly.
And so it gets to be such a beautiful, just a beautiful experience of like what being is.
Yeah. And I think what I had misunderstood for such a long time is that we spend a lot of time on like the mind and the body,
Mm.
right? And
Mhm.
we need to be physically healthy. We need to be mentally healthy, but we also need to be spiritually healthy.
Yeah.
And that was the part I had been ignoring for such a long time.
Mm.
It didn't exist. I was an atheist. I was a, Christian, raised Christian as a child, Bible school, all of that
Mhm.
stuff. And
We could get into
they
that.
taught me, yeah, totally.
Same.
They taught me what God was.
Yeah.
And so at a certain point, you turn away from it because it doesn't resonate.
Mhm.
But it doesn't resonate because you didn't build a relationship. You
were
took
forced
on,
into it. So then you push it away.
yeah, you
super
took someone
hard.
else's description of a relationship on as your own.
Yeah.
And so we just redefined those relationships. But essentially it was like, I was an atheist. I was like, I don't believe in any of this stuff. I wasn't very spiritual. I wasn't, I didn't do any of that stuff. And so it wasn't until that experience, it was like, I didn't listen to the whispers. I didn't listen to the screaming. Full stop moment. You're a body and you're a soul. And it's this, how do we honor both?
Mhm.
And it's that lightness of being. It's like, I could have been fearful. I could give me all the medication, take me to the next specialist, tell me the next, what's the next step? I was going to let them tell me.
Mm.
That would have been kind of a darker path to go down, right? Because it wasn't my path.
Mhm.
My path was, how can I take this and make it my own and decide to stay in the light, right? This bad thing that's happened to me. And I've had I'm sure you have had too, of like bad things that happen to you. It's like, how do I take this and not let it be the definition of who I am?
Yeah.
I want to be something different than this. So boundary setting, spiritual practices, right? Like, you want to go whole hog in things. If you're like, I want to learn this and this and this. And it's like, just take a little bit. Just a little buffet, like a small plate.
It's so hard for me. I was just talking to my friend and we've like found out that he was also a manifesting generator. And like, we just put everywhere all the time. Like my hands are in a gazillion different things all at once. And part of my practice is to be like, yes, okay, that's such a beautiful piece of it. And also what is really, really calling your attention? So one of my favorite questions to ask is like, where is my energy required today?
Yes. Yeah.
Because it's like, it's that piece of me that goes all over the place also like that is a gift. And also how do I like consciously direct that energy
Yeah.
though? And then like to what else you're speaking to, like bringing in those spiritual elements and then just like all these other practices to come back to that space of what you said earlier about unlearning.
Yeah.
And the conversation that we were having the other day. And I was reflecting on that earlier and particularly in the context of relating. And because you and I both have a similar attachment style.
Yes, we do.
Being so anxious. And
working our way towards security.
That's
what I like to see it as. Like, I'm not anxious. I'm working my way.
And that's exactly
I
how
actually
it feels. It really feels that way.
I actually feel more secure than I ever have.
Same.
But it's still going to be a process.
Yeah, because there's always these little things that come in and that you notice.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you indulge them sometimes because it's an unlearning. And so there's that space of being compassionate and self-forgiving within that space of like, okay, I understand that this is what that was. And also let's start to choose something different every day. Like in the process that I've been in, just the one thing that I keep coming back to is like, okay, Monika, I know you want to do that again, but every moment, even every second that you choose to not do that is a win.
Exactly.
And it's moment by moment. It's access consciousness, the energy work that I do, they talk about living in 10-second increments.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because and that's also, it comes back to that space of presence, right? Like just being very present in the moment. Because like if you are, what are you choosing right here and now? Are you going to choose something from that same patterning, that same wounding, that same type of attachment or whatever
Mhm.
it is. Or like in this moment, you can recognize that you want to do that,
Yeah.
but also know that there's a healthier option available. So in this one moment, can you just choose to, even if it's not even taking a different action, it's just choosing to not do what you were doing.
Exactly. Because
Yeah.
that is an action.
Yes.
It's by not doing, it's
Yeah.
an action too. And I think we forget that. Like taking action, I have to do. So it's like, no,
No.
you can actually just be, and that is an action.
Yeah.
And it's the unlearning process.
Mhm.
And it's interesting as you're bringing that up, I was thinking of something and now it slipped my mind, so it'll come back.
That's okay. I had something else that was coming through too, and I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, no, I already forgot it."
Yeah. But in that process of it's really appreciating the things that are gifted to you. So like, for example, I got into a fender bender the other day. I could have been really angry. I could have chosen to be worried or fearful or frustrated with my insurance companies or what comes next and given into all of these things. But really what I chose to do was like, truthfully, everyone walked away, right? This could have been
Yeah.
so much different. That what if? It's like it could be this, but it also could be this.
Yeah.
And you can choose in that moment. And I think we've gotten so disconnected. And this is some of the work that I actually do with clients. It's like you're so disconnected from your true self. Do you know, like really know how long 10 seconds is? Can you sit in silence for 1 minute? And people are like, oh, I can't meditate. I just can't shut off my mind. It's like that right there.
Yeah.
That tells you you need it more than anybody. Because if you're so disconnected from what time is, and even time, that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
But like, if you can't sit in that silence for 10 seconds and then choose different, then you're not really staying present in the moment. And if you're feeling yourself getting anxious or you're overwhelmed or you're, sit in the car, sit in your house, sit at your desk, wherever you are, sit and just everybody stop. Let the world stop for 10 seconds. It's not going to fall apart. It's not going to burn. You're not going to, you're not going to die. Just sit for 10 seconds.
Feels that way, even while you're sitting in it when you're first
when you first get in the
learning.
practice.
Yeah, it feels that way. And it takes a lot of practice.
It does.
A lot of practice to get
Oh,
those
yeah.
feelings.
Oh, I'm not saying this is an easy route. It's been years of things that I've had to unlearn to do, but it was giving myself the opportunity. If anybody deserved a chance to try, it was me.
you.
And I think we forget that. We're so quick to blame ourselves and punish ourselves and not honor the commitment to ourselves, right? We're like, oh, I'll meet you at coffee for tea for at 2 o'clock. I will honor that because it's you. Would I do that same thing for me? And when you ask yourself that, you're like, oh, or am I going to reschedule it because something else is more important? I have to get to that class, or I need to return that phone call, or I have to go run this errand. I can do that later. Do you hold your commitment to yourself that you're going to go sit with yourself for 10 minutes? Or are you going to go do that errand instead? Because you have to, because you should.
Yeah.
Instead of letting it unfold the way that it's meant to unfold.
Which leads into such a beautiful conversation about self-love, because that's really what it is. It's a space of deep self-love. And yesterday was Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you because I didn't get to ask you yet, but I had the most amazing day yesterday. And like, I'm not in a relationship. It's not about that. It's because this has been a whole process of really returning to, just like what loving myself looks like. But at the end of the day, I got to go and be with just some of my really amazing friends just in community space. And I shared a prayer and we sang, just did song circles, and we were just like spending time together. And it was the most nourishing space and day that ever, like, and we were all in conversation about how, like some people there are in relationship, but we were all, you didn't even like feel that energy though. Like we were all there together, and also uncovering this and having conversations about like how we've all been out in the world today, and in that day, and getting to witness how the energy that's around, at least like within our realm and within our sphere, didn't feel so like constrained to love as in me and this one person, right? It's starting to feel so much more expansive. Like people are actually beginning to tap into that space of what love really is, which is
Mhm.
everything, everywhere,
Everything,
all
the
the
time.
time.
That's why we're
Everything
here.
everywhere all the time. That's why we're
That's the
here. Like the
answer.
only real thing is love. And when you actually, and
Mhm.
like for me, I've really only been able to tap into what that means and understands over the last few weeks.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
Like
wow.
truly. It's one
Oh,
of those
you're,
things
like,
where it's like,
fresh in here.
I'm fresh into here. It's so amazing though. And
It
I'm
gets
like,
so much
oh,
better.
yeah,
It does.
it has to. Yeah,
Yeah,
like how does
it
it not?
does.
'Cause it's like when you operate from the space, I'm like, wait, because I've been unlearning
Mhm.
love,
Right.
what I've been conditioned
To
love
believe.
to
Mhm.
be.
Mhm.
And through that space of deeply, deeply loving myself and setting boundaries and honoring living in the present
Yeah.
and choosing to move forward from that space and nurturing myself and sitting with
Mhm.
myself and doing all these things and like all the iterations of that, it's like uncovering and then getting, messages through Instagram and all these other different, like I follow a lot of really, really incredible content, and the algorithms have me pinpointed just great. But
Don't
it's
you love
great.
that?
It's
Don't you
so
love when
good
that
though,
happens?
because what they're showing me is like there's so much beauty. And I'm like, yes, great. I love this. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
It's that
so much
gratitude
beautiful.
piece.
It's that gratitude piece. I'm
It'll keep
so, so
showing it. If
grateful.
you
If you
pull
align
in
with the
gratitude,
frequency.
if you pull in gratitude for the love
Yeah.
that you receive, regardless of who you're getting it from, you end up with more of it. But people are always seeking it. They're
Seeking
chasing
it
after
outside
it. They're
instead of like
seeking it.
developing it here.
Exactly.
And then
Mhm.
showing the gratitude that you have for that and then allowing that to just like come back to you in all of these different forms. So
Exactly.
yeah, I'm fresh in it and I'm like ecstatic about
Yeah.
it. But then yeah, coming into this day of love, just
Right.
about love, but
Mhm.
dismantling what it has been and like actually just laughing at like
Right.
what part of the world still thinks that it is or should be, and then being like this day, and a lot of there are some people who are just like, I don't do Valentine's Day and stuff like that, and
Right.
I was actually one of those people for a while, even being in a relationship. I was like, this is a weird holiday, it's a Hallmark holiday, like
Right.
we don't need to do this.
Mhm.
And now approaching it from the space, I'm like, you guys, we have a day to celebrate. I mean, like, we celebrate love every day, but like, we have a day where we just get to celebrate love. Like, that's amazing. Like, this is so cool. Like, I don't even want to call it Valentine's Day. It doesn't matter what you call it. I'm like, but
Exactly.
a day where we all just like
Mhm.
celebrate love, which it was so funny because there were also moments yesterday where I was like, I should be doing this. I should be doing that. And instead, like,
Mhm.
I let myself go up to the mountain and then I let myself go to this beautiful birthday celebration for a friend at the park where we like cold plunged and danced and had like a little DJ set. And then I went to go hang out with my friends. And it
Yeah.
was amazing. It was
So you
just-
went into letting go
yeah,
and living with the flow of life.
yeah.
And
the
you were
frequency
and
of
you
love,
were
and just let love carry
when
me.
you exactly when you
So
let
beautiful.
go of control, you were rewarded with love. And I think that's what we forget is like love can come in different forms. And because we've been conditioned to see love as relationship, you only get it in relationships or from your parents,
Mhm.
or maybe not,
Or from animals.
or from animals.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it
You
only
get
comes from these
love.
things. It's
Like-
like, but now you can get to a space of playing with it. And I think people
Mm.
forget that too. Is like, can you trust that you can get love from a total stranger? We see this stuff happen all the time. Like, oh, we see it in content.
Mhm.
Oh, look at those strangers just totally loving each other. It's because they can carry that love in a neutral context, not in a romantic, sexual, whatever kind of context. It's just a neutral context. And then you're gifting it to that
Yeah.
person. So even just the simple transactions, and I love doing this. It used to annoy me at Dutch Bros. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay.
Why are you talking to me? Just give me my coffee. I'll be the first to admit that used to be me. But when I got to the space that you're in now, I'm a little bit further down the road than you.
Yeah.
That's why I love that you're in this
Yeah.
beginning. I'm
You're
like,
like-
this is so fun. It's so fun to witness this. Because I remember myself at the beginning of it. And now I'm further down the road. I'm like, oh, it gets so much deeper and better.
Mm.
And how you can share love with people. But now I'm recognizing it's an opportunity to share love with someone else. I don't have to have a relationship with a coffee maker, but I can share love with a coffee maker because they're loving their job enough to
Mm.
provide to other people. And in that exchange, you can share love and interest and recognize that they're a human. They're not a bot, right? You're not just another number, which we feel like that out in the world all the time.
Mhm.
You want to feel seen, you want to feel heard, and that's what they're doing there. And that's what their structure is based on. It's you're not just another number. You're a person that wants coffee.
Yeah.
And so like the person at the gas pump or the person at the grocery store, or, you see this old gentleman like picking out produce. It's like, I really like your jacket today. And you don't realize that the impact that that could have on them, because then they go home and go, wow, someone noticed me today
Spreading little
because
fairy
you
dust
spread
everywhere.
love. It doesn't cost you anything. It
Nothing.
takes half a second for you
You
to
gain
acknowledge them.
so much by even just giving that little bit.
So every day when I'm out, if I'm out, I
Yeah.
want to just, who can I give a compliment to, or who can I share some love with today? And it becomes almost like a mission of me. So I plan of it now. Like, who's going to get my love today?
No.
And then you just kind of feel into it and you're like,
Mhm.
oh, I feel like it's that person.
Yeah.
And you go and you say something. It takes a bit of bravery, right?
Yeah, of
But
course.
after a while, it just becomes second nature.
Yeah. Instead of like being annoyed at the person who cut you off in traffic or
Exactly.
something like that, right?
Man,
Just
I really
unfortunate.
hope that person in the hospital you're trying to see is okay.
Yeah.
Assign them a story that's positive.
Mm-hmm.
Not, oh, they're a jerk. It's like, no, truthfully, they're not even thinking of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the truth of
Truthfully,
it.
they're just
But
like,
that's also depressing.
yeah.
So if you can put it in a context of like, man, I really hope you get home to the love of your life.
Yeah. It's so funny. I love like any car scenarios are just like so funny to me. Like today, as I was driving here, I was trying to take a left out of my neighborhood, and this girl, she was the only one that she was coming, and she was coming down the road. So I'm like waiting for her to go wherever, and she was like gonna turn left into the neighborhood, and she obviously has the right of way, but she's looking at me, and I was like, Sarah, like you basically have the right of way, right? And my brain, and she did eventually turn. She like waved to me and eventually turned. And like where I automatically go to, I have like funny road rage, kind of. It's not like full road rage, but when I get frustrated, it's always when I'm trying.
It's a conversation.
It's a conversation.
We're having a conversation.
We're having a
I'm the same way.
conversation.
I think
It's
we're
so
the same
funny.
person.
So we should look at our charts. We haven't done that.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. But
I'm
I
a
was
projector
like,
though, so.
oh, okay.
Sorry to but I'm a projector, so I know Manny gently. Manny,
Yeah.
we get along just fine.
We do. But it was so funny because like my brain was like, you have the right of way. Like go. Like basically like go. It's your turn.
Yeah.
And as we're having this conversation, I'm like, oh, but she was being considerate and loving of me by looking at me and be like, what are you gonna go? Like, is it your turn? I was like, it's yours. But it's just reframing it a little bit instead of being like, dude, you have the right of way. Like, go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's being annoyed with that. But as I did that, like after she turned and then I turned and I like saw myself doing that and I was like, love.
It's like that moment in The Office when Andy and Dwight are trying to nice each other. They're just both equally being nice to one another. It's like, okay, well, somebody needs to receive. There needs to be a receiver of love and the giver of love. And this is
yes.
And it really, if you do a count, if you think about it in those scenarios, just do a count in your head. How many seconds go by before you're ready to get angry? Because that'll tell you how short your fuse is. And so you can start to build the fuse a little bit longer. Because I'm the same way. It took a little while because not that I was like aggressive, but it was just, I was talking a lot in my car.
Yeah.
My children have picked it up, which is how I knew it was a problem. It's just like, oh,
they're great little mirrors.
She is a backseat driver. Okay, that was my fault. She's yelling at other cars. Clearly, I'm doing that a lot too. So let's build this up. And so I would just count in my head instead and be like, oh, wow, that took me 3 seconds to get angry. Why am I so angry in 3 seconds? Why did I count? Okay. And so now it's just like, it really doesn't bother me as much as it used to before. I'm not as quick to anger because it was just bringing my awareness, being conscious of your choices.
Yeah.
Right. And so you did that, but it was nice of her to try to give to you. Like, that's really what she was trying to do.
That's really what she was just being
you.
considerate of, like, you're also driving and it looks like you're coming my direction. So like,
go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. Love is, I'm so glad that came into the conversation.
It's really why we're here.
That's why we're here.
It's the only reason.
That's the only reason.
It's, we just need to spread love to one another. And it's in those smaller moments that we do it. And it's showing up for people and
not
also,
from an ego standpoint. Like, that's the thing, is like, you know, when it's from your ego. Like, there's so many people that do like give over give, right? Recovering people pleaser, like overgive. Yeah. Overgive from that space. And it's like, that doesn't mean that you're loving any less, but you're loving with condition, even if it's unconscious. And love,
it's a hard pill to swallow. Yeah.
And love is not conditional. So it's not, in some sense, it's not actually love because of the space that it's
The intention.
coming from, the intention that it's coming
Yeah.
from. And it's like you may mean well,
Mhm.
but if it's conditional, it's not love.
And if you have enough self-love, that will be enough.
Yeah.
So any additional love someone wants to give you, that's just I call it icing and sprinkles, like on a cupcake. Like everyone's like, "Oh, and it's the sprinkles that like
Yeah.
that's nice, but I'm the cupcake."
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like
Mhm.
I have enough love for myself that I don't need it externally. Anything else is just beautiful.
Yeah.
And what a great way to have that overflow that I can give to other people in that love. And so it's just how do you fill up that self-love enough to not need it externally, but be given it and learn how to receive it. I think that's where I'm at now is like, how do I learn to receive it? Because that's just as important.
Yeah.
When we talked about contrast the other day, it's like keeping things in balance. It's not just about giving love to others, but how can you also stand, witness, and receive the
Mhm.
love that other people are trying to give, which is what she was trying to do for you. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Will you share that the metaphor that you use for contrast that you shared with me
Sure.
the other day? Because
Yeah.
that was really beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we forget when we're in moments of hard times, like I had talked about earlier, is how do we take that and leverage that? And it's finding the balance of the counter. So it's if you follow Daryl Anka, he channels Bashar, and
Oh, really? That's his name?
Bashar is
I
the
know Bashar,
entity.
but yeah.
Yeah, his name is
Daring.
Daryl Inca.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a brilliant man, and how he started is really fascinating, and, it's some of the channeling of what he does is what I do. But I don't I don't quite practice it the same way. Um, all of this to say is, like, what he talks about is when you're given something you don't prefer, it's you're still benefiting because 'cause you're learning of what you do prefer. So if I don't wanna get into a fender bender, I'm learning all the feelings of being in a fender bender, the fear, the frustration, the anger. I'm showing it in its full capacity so that I know I would much rather not have that. I would like to have peace and joy and ease and everything kind of going my way. And so it's this contrast between the 2. And so when we're in a situation where it feels like either the world that feels a little bit big, let's bring this down. If it feels like um, our human selves, our physical body, our mental health, all of that is taking precedence. That can be weighed down. We can be adding chunks in the scales. And this is where we kind of get stuck in fear and anger and kind of the lower vibrational frequencies. We have to remember that that means now we're out of balance. And so we can't be too heavily in one area. If we're too heavily in the fear and the frustration and the anxiety, then that means our spiritual selves isn't getting what it needs. We're out of balance. And so it's not necessarily, it is helpful to remove things or people or tasks or projects that are not helping to kind of bring it back into balance. But it's also important not just to take away, but to add in the other column. What are practices I can do? And it's not about going to the buffet and I'm going to go to sound bowl and I'm going to get a massage and I'm going to do Reiki and it's not about how many of those things, right? Because we go to the buffet, we're just give it all.
Yeah.
Is there one
So
thing?
we're kind of desperate sometimes when it's really out of
Exactly.
balance. We're just
Yeah.
like, what can I do?
I need a quick fix. I need a
Yeah.
quick solution to bring
Yeah.
it back in balance. And if you can pick one practice or one thing that resonates the most with you that livens you up, believe it or not, that will be enough to bring it back into balance. So if it's just spending an hour talking about the gene keys and you feel that like, oh, excitement and energy around it, you are actually bringing it in balance without having to do 6 other things. It's just that one is so powerful for you that it will bring it back in balance.
And you're feeding your joy.
You are.
Yeah.
And so how do we find that balance? It's like not letting one outweigh the other. And when we notice it's heavily outweighed, if you notice there's a string of days where everything's going wrong, people are getting on your last nerve, your anxiety is sky high. Hey, you're out
You're
of balance.
exhausted.
Yeah, you have to either take out things, which can be difficult to do if we have a lot of responsibilities on our plate. I'm not unrealistic. I'm a single mother and I have a lot on my plate. I'm not unrealistic about that. I know people have a lot going on in their lives. So maybe we can't take out, but maybe we can add something that's lighter, that's feeding the joy and the happiness and the higher frequencies that bring us contentment. It doesn't have to bring us money. It doesn't have to be quick. It doesn't have to be a short-term solution. It can be something that you return to that brings you back into that balance.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's all about consistency because it's like the world is, there's always going to be things that are going to come onto our plate. Like, if you use like your to-do list as an example,
Yeah.
it's like, great, you check everything off one day, but it's like, it's never ending. Like there's
Right.
always going to be things, there's always going to be stuff there. So it's like finding the the practices, the spaces in your life, the things that really do feed your soul, feed your joy, feed your lightness, feed your happiness, feed your self-love, so that when things, especially unexpected stuff comes in that, like a car accident, and starts to weigh down a little bit heavier, it's like, okay, but I have all of these practices and all of this stuff to come back to. So it's like,
Exactly.
we're going to still, it's maybe doing this a little bit right now, but like, or
Right.
like this, but
Right.
I have these consistent practices that are helping keep me in some form of a stable state. So it's like when these things happen, it's not so incredibly destabilizing. It's just a little bit off kilter, but I can still find my way back into that balance. That's how I feel about I've been doing, yesterday was the end of a 40-day Kundalini practice challenge that I was doing. And today when I sat down, I was like, my brain was like, well, I could do the same practice that I've been doing, but I was like, I know I need to do something for myself. And so I chose something totally different in the,
Yeah.
because I pay for their online platform, but I knew I had to sit down and do it. Like, even though I had like hardly any sleep and all this, like the one thing was I was like, okay, my practice. And I like made sure that I showered and brushed my teeth, and just did these basic things. And I'm still feeling exhausted.
Yeah.
But even after that practice and like before, and I've been really good, I don't drink coffee anymore. Like I don't go back into those automatic, like, oh, I'm tired, so I need to do these things. So then when the call, so I was like, let spirit and let the practice feed me first. And then when I felt the call to be like, yeah, I'm still feeling a little bit tired, I feel really called to go to a coffee shop. Okay,
Right.
let's do that. Not gonna get coffee, but I will get a chai. And
Exactly.
which then led me to my friends and getting to talk about the gene keys, and then getting to like be able to be here and doing this, which is already, even like I was feeling tired before I came to.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that way. No. So you talk about like feeding this, it's like,
Right.
yeah.
Well, and it's recognizing it before it's too late. Because you get halfway through the day, have you stopped? Just to be present for that moment. What do I need in this moment? Not what do I need for the next 6 hours? It's like, what do I need in this moment? What need isn't being met? Can I give it to myself? If I can't give it to myself, who do I know that can give that to me? Right? And so start with the self-love, and then go, okay, well, I can't. So I'm gonna reach out to this person, or I'm gonna go do this practice because that's what I know works for me. And it's leaning on that consistency of like the self-love first, do your practice consistently, and then have that tool so that the whole day isn't ruined. Or you stay in that state for too long. Because if you stay in this state for too long, the whispers start.
They do.
And then the shouting starts.
Yeah.
And then it's a full life stop moment. And you don't want the life stop moment. You don't even want the shouting, trust me.
No, do not want the shouting.
You don't even really want the whispers, but the whispers are gonna come and go anyway.
Yeah. And the whispers still came for me today, like in the
Right.
shoulds of like how I should have been spending my day, but my ability to show up to those and just allow them to be there and go through was, I could just be with it instead of letting it take me over because of how I showed up for myself this morning and just into the flow. And
Yeah. And it's recognizing this contrast for what it is and not beating ourselves up. So like you're gifted the opportunity to feel, this sounds strange, so bear with me. But you were gifted the opportunity to feel exhausted and run down and tired, and because that's the contrast of what you were about to feel with your friends. So that you could appreciate that time with your friends even more, because you know what it feels like when you run down and tired and you don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
And so how much sweeter it is when you get that experience and you're like, oh yeah, this is why I did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting too, because as you were saying that, I was thinking of how like the reason that, I mean, part of the reason I didn't get sleep was because this one kept having to go outside to relieve his bowels. The other reason was like I didn't get home until I got home at like 1:11 in the morning last night after spending time with my friends, which is not like terribly late. I don't usually do that, but if I had gotten sleep, it probably would have been okay. But the contributing factor of both of the things was a lot and led me to
It
being
is.
exhausted. But it was also that space of like, okay, I don't do that very often, like stay out that late. And usually I am getting good rest and waking up like really just feeling really nourished and like wait, I usually wake up at like 5:30 to do practice and journal and all those things. So it's that contrast as well of like, okay, you chose to be with your friends and stay out a little bit later so that you were as well rested. And that was a piece too. So it's like also knowing that you're not as you know, you're not exactly in the state that you would like to be able to take on your day and the effect
Right.
that that has. So how important it is to like really make sure that you're honoring yourself. Like even if you are hanging out with friends and having a great time, like if your body says it's time to go home, then it's time to go home.
Yeah.
It's time to
That's true.
sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really tuning into your body.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, that's a lot of more of the work I do before. I said it's like you become so disconnected from yourself that you're missing these little simple cues
Mhm.
that your body's trying to give you
Mhm.
and or your life is trying to give you to like let go of control and just honor what's happening and know that it wasn't meant to happen right then or it wasn't meant to be. And when we push back past those points, or we close our ears and no, I'm having a
Mm.
great time. No, I might be exhausted, but no, I'm having a great time. I want to hold on to this. And I have that as one of my gene keys, by the way. It's
Do
like
you
it's not
really?
enough. Like it's like a need. It's I forget
Do you
what the
remember the
word is.
shadow? Okay.
Off the top of my head, I'm not
That's
remembering
okay.
what it is. But yeah, it's this like you get it and you just want more of it. And it's because the sensation is what we're collecting,
Yeah.
right? Because we want to hold on to
The
those really beautiful
feeling.
sensations. Yeah, because life is hard. It's hard being in this human experience.
Mhm.
So we want to hold on to the good ones when they're happening to us. And
The way we hold on to them is by being present with them, even if
exactly.
in the next moment we choose to leave and go home.
hmm Exactly. And so you have to be brave enough to say, okay, this is great. And I'm sure if I stayed, it will continue to be great.
Mhm.
But my body is asking me to do something for it. And I love myself enough to go do that. And you still walk away at the peak. When they
Mhm.
say like leave your career when you're at your peak,
Yeah.
it just goes down to from there. It's like that metaphor, right? It's like
Yeah.
you got to leave when it's at its peak and just really honor your body and whatever it's asking for.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's saying no to going out because your body's just saying like we're just not it's just not today.
It's just not today.
Yeah. And if the people around you love you, like really do love you,
Mhm.
they're gonna be fine with
Oh,
it,
yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Of course. You just have
So
to love yourself enough to do
yeah,
that for you.
yeah.
As you were talking, I was just thinking about, my own journey and experience, but also like how difficult it is because it's not in my gene keys. However, it's been very prevalent in my
Mhm.
world, letting go of control and surrendering and releasing. And, but like how really the only way out of that is by stopping for 10 seconds, for 10 minutes, by coming into presence. Because if you can't,
Mhm.
it's that space of like, if you can't if you can't be aware of what you're doing, like whether you come to that
Mhm.
awareness or someone it's harder when someone shows it to you because that's usually when triggering happens,
Well,
right? But
yeah.
like if you can't become aware of it, then there's no way that you can change it. And like when I go like think back to all of the control mechanisms that I've used in the past, it's like I was just deeply unaware. It's not that I wanted to be trying to
Exactly.
control. I didn't even know that
Mhm.
that's what I was doing.
Mhm.
I had no idea.
Right.
I knew that I was anxious and worried and depressed and all this stuff and like and
Mhm.
grabbing and constantly doing and pushing and striving and all this stuff and like there was a lot of beauty that happened, of course, but it wasn't all beauty and lightness
Yeah.
and yeah.
But it's by simply bringing your awareness, not taking action,
No,
not taking a class,
just
not
being
reading a
aware.
book, not doing a workshop, not attending a conference, not having a conversation with a friend, by just simply bringing your awareness, that was enough to shift things. And I think people forget that. It's like we don't have to do
There's
in
nothing
order
for
to
you to
grow.
do.
We just have to bring our
Be.
mindness to it, our mindfulness, our being, our lightness of being into it. If we just bring our being into that space, that's enough to shift the energy. And so it's that 10 seconds of like, even if let's say you get really frustrated, you could sit in your car You give yourself that 10 seconds or 10 minutes or however long you need. Even if you choose to go back into the situation you were just in and not choose different, you at least gave yourself that, which told your subconscious you're worthy of at least that, of that moment to yourself, right? Before you're choosing to enter back into that situation. But you're doing now you're choosing to go back into that situation rather than just doing it unconsciously all of the time, which that's what it is. That's what we're here doing is just practicing, like getting back into that, like, okay, you're back here, back to neutral.
Yep.
Now make another choice.
Now make another choice.
And let life kind of unfold for you. Let go of the control, just make the next choice. And that's where free will comes in. That's a whole other discussion. But as you were talking, I was talking about like what came up in my mind was the inner voice. And again, that's another thing I work with clients is this disconnect. And I talk a lot about this, but there's such a disconnect between ourselves and what we do. And it's bringing our mindfulness back into that. And so we become disconnected from our inner voice, that voice that says, it's time to leave.
Yeah.
Right? That voice that says, you know what, this really isn't for me, but I'm going to stay because I promised them I would. Commitments are important. Absolutely.
Honoring your commitment to yourself, though,
Is priority.
is priority. And we're the cupcake. You're the cupcake.
You're the
Like,
cupcake.
this is
Everything
the
else
most
is icing.
important. This is the one relationship that you have your whole entire life. Like going back to like day of love, like Valentine's Day, whatever. Like this is the most important relationship.
It is.
Right here, right now. Is to like nurture this first and figure out what that is for you, what that looks like.
Right. And I had
Move from that
disconnected
space.
so deeply from myself. I was literally trapped in my body, listening to my own voice, completely unable to use it. Right? Because there's an outer voice that we use, and we use different tones with different people and different scenarios and different friend groups or family or, and we have a different voice for each of those things. How do we unify that voice? Because we shouldn't be using different voices. It should be the same voice that's on the inside. If you have an inner voice, either you can't hear it and you're not listening to it, and you're shaping your voice to meet the different people you're with, you're disconnected. It's like the number one sign because you're now becoming a chameleon.
Wow.
For your circumstances and the environments you're in. Now, there are certain situations where that's necessary for physical safety reasons. But for the most part, if you are speaking differently with this group and then going to work and speaking differently there and hiding part of yourself and you're going here and you're speaking differently at your family's house, a gathering or something, you are very disconnected from you. Because your outer voice should only be a reflection of the inner voice.
That is profound for me to hear.
It wasn't even, I'm getting goosebumps as I'm talking about this, but it wasn't even in my awareness until I was trapped in my body and couldn't actually use my own voice to advocate for me. Because remember, I didn't have anybody in the room advocating for me. My husband couldn't come into the hospital. There was no doctors. There was no one that knew me. No one was advocating for me. I'm going to be my best advocate. I know what's going on in my body and on the inside, but I literally could not tell anyone.
Wow.
I couldn't tell the doctors, please run this test on my body.
Wow.
Right? And so it was such a beautiful like unfolding for me to see. It's like, oh, I don't even know what my voice sounds like. I had disempowered myself because I had silenced myself in conversations with family, with friends, because I was afraid of showing up who I really am, right? Of being my true authentic self. I can't be that if I have a different voice. That's not authentic.
No.
You got to bring all the pieces together. And so using that voice and spending time getting to know that voice, it's not going to happen overnight.
No.
It's an unlearning of all the other voices you've heard. And go, but what's my voice?
And
what
an empowerment.
And you're gifting that to yourself. What a powerful gift to give to yourself. And be like, oh, I'm going to give you the power here to say what you actually think in a kind way. I'm not saying go about like just burning bridges. But what I am saying is like, how powerful is that you're giving yourself that power?
That just gets to emanate out, like you said, it doesn't change as you're going through and who you're talking with. And
your words change. The language you use changes. And at that point, when you're speaking, people listen.
yeah.
Because people want to be seen and be heard. But what they don't realize is that they can't be heard if they're using the same language as everybody else. It's not, their voice isn't going to stand out because it's white noise. It's being added to the rest of the noise. But if you're using their true voice, those are the voices that stand out. Those are the ones you pay attention to because it doesn't sound like everybody else's voice. And the ones that get bothered by it, you're going to know right away. And there's more there. It's really just gifts because you're like, oh, you don't like this voice. Why don't you like this voice? Am I triggering something in you? It's not a reflection of me because this is the true me. It's a reflection of you, what's going on with you.
Yeah.
If you can't handle my true voice, then this is not a good connection to one another. You're not adding value to my life.
And you have enough self-resolve to know that it's not a reflection of you. It's their own.
It's their own.
Their
You
own.
have such compassion for them
Yeah.
too because you're like,
Because
oh,
you see it, you know.
you know, and you're like, oh, you don't know what your inner voice sounds like.
Wow.
And so when they're screaming at you or they say something insulting, you can have compassion for them. And instead of getting bothered, like, wow, you're a jerk, right? Like taking it personally, your ego is not even involved. You're just like, oh, I have such compassion for you because I can only imagine how long you've been silenced.
Wow.
You're even silencing yourself or someone has been silencing you and you're frustrated by that. I have compassion for you and your anger right now because it has nothing to do with me. It has a pattern for you that you need to unlearn and deal with. And I wish you well, or I can help with that if you can, but
Yeah, if you want to receive that, if you're willing to receive that.
if they're willing to receive, exactly.
There's so much reflection that's going on as you were sharing all of that. So I had a friend last night who's really been intimately been able to witness me over the last year but has known me for longer than that. And last night was just sharing as we were so I had shared a prayer that Blue of Earth actually did on one of her podcasts a while back before as we were like setting the container for our collective, group gathering. And then we were also like in song circle but he was sitting next to me after that and he was just playing the guitar. And so something that I've started to work on is just like what is it? Just like channeling things through and people are just like strumming on the guitar or whatever, like totally new space for me. And he was just reflecting to me because I was doing that a little bit as he was playing. He's just like, it's been really beautiful to witness you as your voice has been opening, Monica, over the last year or so, like the work that you've been doing and how you've been in like the podcast and with all these other things, like how that's been coming through because of that. That's been a space that's been shut down. I mean, being a woman, but also just the way that I grew up, right? And so to see that reflected from someone who I'm very close with was just, it felt really good. And also, as you were speaking, I was just thinking how you're talking about how we have different voices that we use for people. And I've just never really been aware of that until really being able to tap into what my true voice actually is. And then witnessing over the last few weeks how I've been able to see my true voice be in my one-on-one friendships, with my clients, in all these other, with the person at the grocery store, the person at the coffee shop, or all those other interactions. And then thinking about even a few months ago where I'd like to say it was like that, but it definitely wasn't. It's not that there was like a vast difference, but there's a difference. And I've never, no one's ever, I've never heard anyone share it like that in that way. Wow. Yeah. It just feels very profound for me.
Well, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, and
sharing that.
it's interesting too, because this is when they say, like, as you're in your spiritual awakening and as you're going along, it can be very lonely. And it's because the more authentic you become, the people who don't vibrationally match to you kind of fall away.
Yeah.
But that's, again, a beautiful gift. You have to be grateful that they were there because they showed you what you didn't want, what you didn't prefer. so that you know what you do prefer. And without even trying, you will magnetically attract the people that have a similar voice. And it's not about being in an echo chamber. It's about they're in their voice. It's not that we have the same things in common. It's not that we do live life the same way. I now have this beautiful group of friends in all over the world, and they're authors, and but each of they're so unique and authentic to their own voice.
They're rooted in their truth.
They're rooted in their truth, and
Yeah.
it comes out in the way that they speak. And so the more people can get to their own voice, it's scary at first, and yeah, people fall away, but just like I'm saying like a garden, like just like we need to pull the weeds out so that the whole garden is full of flowers and plants, we have to pull those out so we can see the actual ones that we want there, right?
And it's not actually a loss, because like how that's been coming up for me as I was like, oh, I'm losing something,
It's
but it's like
not.
if it's love, it's never lost.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I use the metaphor sometimes of like cleaning the fridge. Like sometimes we need to clean the fridge. Sometimes things are expired and they need to move on, and that leaves now an open space on the door for a new bottle. What's the new condiment that's coming in here now? And
And releasing
that
control of what that is or what that's gonna look like or
exactly.
who that's gonna be, but
You
just
get to get
letting the space
excited.
be there. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
oh wow,
What's
okay,
it gonna fill this
whenever
up?
that
Is it
wants
gonna
to
be a
come in,
condiment?
like,
Is it gonna
cool.
be a drink? Is it gonna be chocolate? Is it gonna be like you just don't know what's gonna fill that space. So you can get
Yeah.
excited when those things happen. So honor it. Don't I think that's the other thing too, is like we are very quick when something bad happens. Let's say a relationship ends. As I've gone through a divorce recently, and people ask me, like, how did you stay in such a good relationship with your ex? And I said, it's because it's not about how it ended. That's not the story. You have to honor the whole story. It started somewhere,
Yeah. And there
right?
was love there.
There was love
You
there.
came together for a reason.
Right. So are we going to honor the hatred and the anger and the stuff that came at the end?
Through your pain body.
Through the pain.
Through that lens. Yeah.
Or are we going to honor the love that was there? That takes precedent. Love comes first before anger and hatred. And if I need to model that out in the world, and that's what I believe in my core value, that love comes first and we need to lead with love, then we need to also honor relationships that end because of the love that existed, and not say, it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Was it hard? Yeah. Were there a lot of lessons? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I can honor that too, because I walked away with knowledge and wisdom and experience and knowing what I don't prefer. And that's a gift too.
Yeah. It's reframing the lens and the perspective of which you view it through and look at it through, and finding the gift in the lightness, even in the dark spaces, which like totally exist. And it's okay to talk about those things. It's okay to process those things. It's like, again, coming back to like this whole human experience, like it all gets to exist. And at the core of all of it, even the pain, is so much love. We're so infinitely loved by the cosmos. It permeates everything. It's here all the time.
And it's accessible.
And it's accessible to even
is.
conceive that like love is lost in any form, in any of a way. Like if you can just for a moment come back to that space of like, no, like it's always here. Even if you can't feel it, which most of it, like in those times when we can't, like even if you can't feel it, that doesn't mean that it's not there.
Right. Exactly.
And so just coming into like that knowing that just like the baseline is love.